So for Tuesday, the 15th of September, um, you'll be reading an essay called A Better Kind of Happiness by Will Storr. It's Unit 6.7 in the hub. Um, and it's a fairly challenging essay, so I thought it might be a good idea for me to make this video to sort of introduce you to the essay and maybe give you a start on the first paragraph, which is really important to the essay. It sort of sets up the whole essay. So I thought we would look down at the first paragraph here and sort of I'll read it out loud and work my way through it and see if it doesn't help you with the rest of the essay. So we'll start with this phrase. Nearly 2.5 millennia ago, Aristotle triggered a revolution in happiness. Well, that's convenient. We've been working on happiness for a week now, and we're going to work on it for another 4 weeks. So Aristotle, you may remember, was a philosopher. He lived 2.5 millennia ago. A millennium is 1,000 years. So he lived in the 400s BC, or BCE, as we say now. And he was one of the most respected philosophers. There were lots of philosophers in ancient Greece, but he was sort of the king of the philosophers. And the Will Storr's article goes on to say that Aristotle triggered a revolution in happiness. Well, that seems kind of interesting. So we're going to talk about some kind of big change about happiness. At this time, when Aristotle was writing and talking and philosophizing, Greek philosophers were trying hard to define precisely what this state of being was. You might be a little puzzled by what they mean by state of being. They just mean happiness. That's a state of being happy. So Greek philosophers were trying hard to define precisely what happiness was. Some of the philosophers contended that it sprang from hedonism. Now, that's a word you may or may not be familiar with, and if you're not, you might be tempted to look it up in a dictionary, but don't. Keep reading, because Will Storr is a very careful writer, and recognizing that lots of people might not know the word hedonism, in the rest of that sentence, he explains what it is. Hedonism is the pursuit of sensual pleasure. So people who are following the route of hedonism in order to make themselves happy believe in eat, drink, and be merry, and living a sort of sensual life. But other philosophers argued from the perspective of tragedy. Tragedy, now he's using tragedy not in the ordinary sense of the word, but remember, this is ancient Greece. Ancient Greece was the birthplace of drama. The Greeks loved plays, and they had two kinds of plays: comedies and tragedies. So the other philosophers argued from the perspective of tragedy. What happens in a tragedy? The hero dies at the end of the play. So believing happiness to be a goal, a final destination that made the drudgery of life worthwhile. They believed that happiness was something that you would only achieve at the end of your life. That when your life was over, then you would be rewarded in some way. You would be happy for having led a decent life. And Will Storr goes on to point out that these ideas are still with us today, of course. Okay? So then comes a sentence that a part that I'm still puzzled over. In the decadence of Instagram and gourmet burger culture. So he says these ideas about the only way to get to happiness is to be good in your life. Don't go in for hedonism, but suffer along through life, and when it's all over, you'll be rewarded. That lives on with us today in the decadence of Instagram and the gourmet burger culture. I can partly, I think I know what gourmet burger culture means. That just means elite, wealthy culture. People who don't just eat a hamburger, they go have some kind of gourmet hamburger. You might have said the latte culture or the wine drinking culture. But what about that decadence of Instagram? I don't get it. I have no idea what that means. I've never used Instagram, so maybe that's my problem. If so, maybe some of you on Tuesday can explain that phrase to me. But luckily, he says it's either that, those ideas about getting a reward when you die, are with us in those things, Instagram and gourmet burger culture, or, oh, thank God for an or in the Christian notion of heaven. So notice that a lot of people believe in heaven who aren't Christians. A lot of people believe there's some reward in an afterlife. So the word heaven is standing for that idea that even though life is hard and you suffer a lot and there's not much happiness in it, you will be happy in the next life. Okay, so that's the two philosophies that the Greek philosophers had developed. Either eat, drink, and be merry, be a hedonist, or behave yourself, be decent in your life, and you get rewarded in the next life. And here comes, remember he said that Aristotle triggered a revolution? Well, here comes the revolution. Aristotle proposed a third option, a new option. The choices were not just hedonism or wait till the next life. In a work called Nicomachean Ethics, we're gonna read that work next after we finish with Will Storr. In that treatise that he wrote, he describes the idea of eudaimonic happiness. All right, now this is a really important word, eudaimonic. Eudaimonic happiness. It's sort of a key to this whole article, and I want you to. I'm going to talk about it a little bit in just a minute, but as you read the rest of the article, he begins to clarify what that means, and I want you to really look for that when you read the article. And on Tuesday, we're going to talk about what does he mean by eudaimonic happiness. He goes on. Will Storr goes on to say eudaimonic happiness, which said essentially happiness was not a feeling, but a practice. Happiness, that's what a eudaimonic idea of happiness is, that happiness isn't something you feel, that's hedonism, but it's a practice, it's a promise, it's a process, something like that. It's this woman, Helen Morales, a philosopher at University of California, says it's living in a way that fulfills our purpose. So we have a purpose. That just raises another word or introduces another word that is a little hard to figure out. What is it? What does it mean to say we have a purpose? Was my purpose to teach English to you guys? I'm still doing it. It's 78. Morales goes on to say, it's flourishing, Aristotle was saying. Stop hoping for happiness tomorrow. Happiness is being engaged in the process. So it's something, this eudaimonic happiness is something about that you can be happy with the process of life, with the actual going through life. It doesn't have to be miserable the way that sort of Christian notion was. You suffer a lot, but you'll be rewarded in the next life. And it doesn't have to be hedonistic. You can be happy in life. There's another way to be happy by living a life that in which you're engaged in your life, in your process. And now, thousands of years later, this is a really interesting conclusion to this paragraph. Today, 2.5 millennia later, evidence that Aristotle may have been onto something has been detected in the most surprising of places, in the human genome. Remember the double helix with our genes and our chromosomes in it? So somehow, scientists have realized that people that live the kind of life, this life full of eudaimonic happiness, the people who live that kind of life have healthier and longer lives. Their gene structure is improved by that kind of a life. All right, that's what that paragraph says. And so I want you to really watch for that phrase, eudaimonic, or eudaimonic happiness, in the rest of the essay and try to figure, he's going to explain it some more as you move through the essay. So try to get a clearer idea of what he means by that. And in the process, he will use the phrase, it's the kind of happiness that comes from living a good life, a life with purpose. And look for those phrases, particularly a good life. What is a good life according to Aristotle or according to Will Storr's reading of Aristotle? So there you go. That's a pretty tough paragraph, and I thought it might help you with the rest of the essay if I worked that through for you. So I hope this challenging essay doesn't wreck the weekend for you. Enjoy your weekend, but also do a little work on this reading, Will Storr's A New Kind of Happiness. And I'll see you all on Tuesday.